Well, hello again. Another week has flashed by. It's the 30th of November 2025 and it's a couple of minutes to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I've had a fairly busy morning, so I might look a little scruffier than usual, if that's possible. Okay. So, what have I seen this week in the wonderful world of ETs coming here and crashing here and their technology is being reverse engineered, piffle peddling? I've seen a bit actually. I've got a few notes here. This may be a reasonably long one. We'll see. Now, I was looking at a YouTube channel earlier on, and part of the title for the video was, could Marco Rubio force disclosure? Now, Marco Rubio, of course, is the US Secretary of State. Well, me, or was. No, he must be, mustn't he? If he was, he wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't even be suggesting that you could force disclosure. And the answer, of course, to that question, could Marco Rubio force disclosure, is, of course, not. There is nothing to disclose. I mean, everybody in that movie seems to want to convince the general public that there is something to this. This ET is coming here and crashing here and their technology is being reverse engineered. Nonsense, when very clearly there isn't. There's not a scrap of tangible evidence to support even one of these fanciful yarns. Now, I've said it before in comments, and I used it actually in the last video title. It's far more likely that I will be made the next Pope than it would be for Donald Trump to disclose ETs are coming here and crashing here and their technology is being reverse engineered. You know, because it's not happening. So, obviously I'm not expecting to be made the next Pope. But it's more likely that I would be made the next Pope than Donald Trump will stand up on his podium and say, ET's coming here, crashing here, and this has been a cover-up for many years, you know, the Roswell crash was real and all that, because none of it was real. Okay, so I think it's very clearly all bullshit. None of this is real. I can't quite get my head around why all of these people, you know, Gary Nolan and Mellon and all these, Knell, Admiral Gallaudet, why all of these people want us to believe it. Why? It's clearly not happening, is it? So why are this entire crew so invested in making us believe it? Who knows? Now, I saw Gary Nolan, and I may have seen this before. This may not be new, but I saw Gary Nolan saying, if you're intelligent enough, you can accept that all this is real without actually seeing any tangible evidence. But you have to be really smart, you know. You have to be like Gary Nolan. You have to be so intelligent that you can tell just by listening to all these people with their fanciful yarns and zero tangible evidence that this ET is coming here and crashing here and their technology is being reverse engineered is all true. Now, Gary Nolan, remember, has claimed to have aliens in his bedroom. An alien in his bedroom just before he started work at Stanford. Just appeared in his bedroom, telepathically communicated with him and said, go to sleep. Go to sleep, Mr. Nolan. In English. I mean, how intelligent would you have to be to even consider that to be true? Alien crosses the galaxy, you know, he's a member of a starship crew. And he goes, out of all the billions of people on Earth, he goes, that Gary Nolan, he's an interesting guy. You know, I'm going to appear in his bedroom and tell him to go to sleep. Such a profound message from an extraterrestrial crossing the galaxy just to talk to Gary Nolan. Now, Gary Nolan, of course, is using the old fairy tale, and that's quite appropriate, really, when you think about it. All this stuff is a fairy tale, isn't it? From Hans Christian Andersen. Do you remember the Emperor's New Clothes? Do you remember that fairy tale? Hans Christian Andersen? Now, Hans Christian Andersen could have written the entire the entire script for the Age of Disclosure comedy movie, really. I'll leave a link below to the fairy tale, the plot of the fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen, The Emperor's New Clothes, where the Emperor, anyone that can't see the Emperor's fabulous new clothes is an idiot. But the Emperor is naked, of course. It's a pretty good analogy, really, isn't it? Gary Nolan is saying, you know, if you can't see this is all real, you are as dumb as a box of hammers. So it's like, and, you know, if you can't see the Emperor is wearing this beautiful new suit, you are as dumb as a box of hammers. The Emperor is, of course, naked. There is no suit there. Just like there are no aliens there. There are no ETs there. I would say the reverse is true, Mr. Nolan. That if you are reasonably intelligent, you can apply critical thought. And there is absolutely no way you would accept any of this science fiction rubbish as truth without peer-reviewed, tangible evidence. Without evidence that's been peer-reviewed by a few reputable universities. You can't accept a claim as extraordinary as aliens are coming here, they're crashing here, and their technology is being reverse engineered, or any one of those single items, as truth without tangible evidence. It's just nonsense. So, you know, why does Gary Nolan, why is Gary Nolan trying to convince us this is true? He doesn't need the money, does he? When it very obviously isn't true. Would he accept claims in his professional life without evidence? I'd very much doubt it. Anyway, we'll be looking at some other stuff said by Christopher Mellon and Knell as we progress. But as I say, that Gary Nolan clip, I don't know if that's a new one or whether he's repeated what he said before, but I've seen that before, where Gary Nolan says if you are sufficiently intelligent you can tell this is all real without a scrap of tangible evidence. You don't need that. Any lawyer will tell you don't need evidence in any courtroom. Any scientific experiment you're asked to examine, Professor Nolan. The last thing you need is evidence, isn't it? We've got a great cancer cure here, and Nolan will just accept that because he thinks he's intelligent enough to just go with it. You know, he's not going to say, well, I'm afraid I'm going to need to see some evidence of that before I can support it. Makes no sense, does it? Flying saucers? Oh yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So, I'll leave a link below to the Hans Christian Andersen Emperor's New Clothes fairy tale plot. And as I said, the entire script for Dan Farah's Age of Disclosure comedy movie may just as well have been written by Hans Christian Andersen. Some Aussies around again today. Now remember too that Nolan is tied up with Skywatcher. You know, Jake Barber. Probably looks ridiculous. You can't see the mosquito, of course. It's only one. But Gary Nolan is tied up with Skywatcher. You know, psionics. Psionically summoning alien spacecraft. You know, they've crossed the galaxy and they're just sitting in geostationary orbit above the planet, just waiting to be summoned by Jake Barber and Battista. And Gary Nolan is tied up with these guys, you know. Skywatcher tell us that apparently their evidence is being peer-reviewed. That's gone a bit quiet, hasn't it? Been no peer-reviewed evidence presented by Skywatcher. I wonder who they consider their peers, who's reviewing it. The evidence I've seen presented by Skywatcher is nothing more than flocks of birds and bugs. And a theatrical prop dog whistle. Electromechanical dog whistle, which is a rolled up roller door with some retic pipe wound around it. You know, it's rubbish. So I'll be very interested to see any peer-reviewed evidence from Skywatcher. And who Skywatcher consider their peers. Okay, so yeah, and yeah, I saw a bit with Mike Battista, you know, claims he can summon an alien spacecraft any time. And he may have watched one of my videos because he seemed to feel obliged to demonstrate this. It was him and Carl Crusher, although this may have been an old video, it may have nothing whatsoever to do with him watching my videos. But they're there and there's a couple of dots right in the distance, you know. If you can summon an alien spacecraft, summon it to land 5 metres away. You know. Don't film dots in the distance that could be anything. More than likely other members of the crew with drones with bright LED lights on. Just a tip for you there, Mr. Battista. So put a line through Skywatcher, put a line through Gary Nolan's rubbish. Now apparently David Grusch, now I haven't watched this Age of Disclosure farce. A few clips tell me all I need to know. He's certainly not getting any of my money. Now, apparently David Grusch chose not to be in Farah's movie. Now Grusch says he thinks everybody should open up and say what they know. Just like you, eh, Mr. Grusch? For example, he thinks that if Elizondo was part of the Legacy UFO Program, he should just say it. Now, for him to use that example, that strongly suggests to me that behind the scenes, Elizondo has told Grusch that he's part of the Legacy Program. I suspect Putoff and Davis have done the same thing. And that's why David Grusch came forward with all that ridiculous nonsense. You know, he's made a real goose of himself by coming forward and telling the mainstream media all this stuff. And now the people that told it to him are not backing him up. That's what Grusch is upset about. I strongly suspect that's what's put Grusch's nose out of joint. Because he's gone on TV, oh yeah, we've got bodies, people are being killed, you know, this is the Legacy UFO Program, you know. And then when it comes to the people that have told him all this behind the scenes, oh yeah, well, I can't talk about that, stroke the goatee, you know. I'm going to have to keep remotely interrogating someone at Guantanamo Bay. Sorry about that slight distraction. So Elizondo and others, probably Hal Putoff and Eric Davis, have filled his head with all this bullshit. He swallowed it hook, line and sinker, appeared on the mainstream media repeating all this stuff as truth, and now feels like he's made a fool of himself because he's not being backed up by these people. And the reason he's not being backed up by these people is they know they cannot say stuff like that to Arrow. They can't say stuff like that in Luna's skiff because Arrow will be there. Arrow can check all this stuff out and it will be found to be science fiction rubbish overnight. Immediately, if not sooner. So Grusch, I think the penny's finally dropped with Grusch, and he's thought, oh no, you know, I've made a fool of myself on mainstream media, repeating all this bloody rubbish as truth, and now the people that have told it to me are all hiding under the table. They're not going to come forward and say anything. Remember Eric Davis has said recently he has no personal experience with extraterrestrial materials, technological or biological. Now, Hal Putoff is still, he sort of comes, he ebbs and flows, doesn't he? It was about a little while ago. Hal Puthoff said the same thing. He has no personal experience with extraterrestrial technology or biology. But now again he's giving the impression that he has. He's aware of it. It's all rubbish, isn't it? Absolute rubbish. And I think there's a bit of infighting behind the scenes, and I think Grusch has said, well, look, you know, if you're not going to tell them what you told me, I'm not going to appear in that movie. I'm not making a fool of myself again. And I strongly suspect that's why Grusch did not appear in that movie. Guard the spade just to stop the pages blowing away. Of course, if you can remote view, you can see that, can't you? You can probably tell me what colour that small garden spade is, can't you, Louis? Yeah, okay. So, and Grusch, of course, has said in the past, you know, Lou Elizondo needs to go to the skiff and he needs to take the red meat. That's another confirmation, I think, that Elizondo has been feeding Grusch all this science fiction rubbish. Grusch has lapped it up. Grusch thinks Elizondo is credible. Well, he did until now, I suspect. No one with an IQ bigger than their shoe size thinks Elizondo is credible. With his chandelier image, these crop irrigation circles. Huge alien mothership. That's just a chandelier, Louis. Oh. Huge UFO, they're just irrigation circles. Not credible. Oh dear. So, yeah, skipped ahead a page here. So, yes. Maybe Grusch has just changed his medication, you know, and he's returned to the real world and he's woken up to the fact that this is obviously all bullshit. But I suspect it was the former. I think it's just that he's annoyed. He's ticked off that these people have been feeding him all this rubbish, but they're not prepared to repeat it to anybody that can check it out. They're not prepared to repeat it to Arrow or in a skiff. Obviously, any skiff involving this subject is going to involve Arrow. And it has to. You can't have fanboys running something like Arrow. You need people with critical thinking ability that will actually look at the evidence, not people that will blindly accept it without any evidence like Gary Nolan. You couldn't possibly have Nolan in an organisation like Arrow. I mean, the Soul Foundation, he's a co-founder of that with that Peter Skafish. You know, but the Soul Foundation is completely pointless. They're wasting their time, as is the Paradigm Institute and the New Paradigm Institute. They're all wasting, and ISA, you know, they're all wasting their time. Okay. On the subject of Lou Elizondo, he's now saying, ordnance inbound. Oh, shit. I should have bought my crash helmet out here. Ordnance inbound. Just like his book, Imminent. How long has that been out? And what's imminently happened? Now, Elizondo is saying ordnance inbound, and it's showing a representation of 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles being launched. A sight you do not want to see. Why would he show an image of 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles being launched and then make a comment like ordnance inbound? Is he suffering some sort of mental health issue? What on earth is that all about? I don't recall seeing on the news any countries being vaporised by 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles. Do you? Ordnance inbound. The interviewer asked Elizondo what this is all about, as I would. You know, I mean, if I saw Elizondo and he said ordnance inbound and there's a big banner there showing 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles being launched, I want to know what that's all about as well. Elizondo tells us a lot of people may see him on a podcast and say Lou isn't telling us anything new. Well, I hate to say it, but that's not my job to tell them anything new. Gave up his job in the Pentagon to tell us everything. Spill the beans. He told us nothing. But it's not his job to tell us anything, you know. So why is he writing books about it, giving talks about it, charging people money to tell them about it? Doing TV shows about it. It's not his job to tell us anything new. Well, it's a waste of time. And why would anybody watch you on TV or buy your book, Louis? All I'm simply doing is keeping the public informed to whatever degree I can. Of course, he knows all about it, but he can't talk about it. Recurring theme with Elizondo. To a degree I can of what I'm doing behind the scenes to help drive disclosure and greater transparency. So he hasn't answered the question, has he? He said ordnance inbound. Showed us a picture of 5 ICBMs being launched. The interviewer said to him, "What's that all about, Mr. Elizondo?" And that was his reply. He doesn't explain what the image of the 5 ICBMs is all about, and what the statement ordnance inbound is all about, has he? He's just gone off at a tangent again. He'd make a pretty good politician. He answers the question he wishes he was asked, not the question he was actually asked. Have you noticed that? That's common with all these people. They will not answer the question. They'll skirt around it. Push a monologue out, especially if it's on MSN, you know, because they know if they push out a monologue, it's burning up their 2 minutes that they're going to get. So the interviewer can't ask them any more questions. So, what I'm doing behind the scenes to help drive disclosure and greater transparency, it's not to reveal the secrets of the world or national security secrets to people. That's not the way it works. After 7 years, people should know that by now. And well, we certainly do, don't we? He said FA, nothing. We don't know what's imminent. He wrote a book and called it Imminent. We've got no idea what's imminent. What's imminent? How long's the book been out? What on earth is ordnance incoming? Well, what's that got to do with anything? Why show us a picture of 5 ICBMs being launched? For dramatic effect, I suspect. What's that all about? What's that got to do with what he's doing behind the scenes? He's doing nothing. All he's doing behind the scenes is selling cheeseburgers and beers. Steaks. His bar and grill. All he ever says is, "Oh yeah, well, I know about that, yeah, but it's not my place to talk about it." Oh, I can't talk about that, you know, stroke the goatee. Yeah, call in 620 skiff, say Lou. Don't attend to skiff, whatever you do. So that's what he said in response to the question. Ordnance inbound, images of ICBMs being launched. What's this all about? And that was his response. What sort of response was that? You know, it's typical Elizondo. Offered a tangent to deflect the question. He tells us 2025 is a good year. There's not much of it left, is there? There's a lot happening. Really? Well, what's he talking about? There's a lot happening. Does he mean the movie? Was this interview filmed before the movie came out, maybe? Maybe that's what he means by there's a lot happening? Personally, I haven't seen anything happening, have you? So, you know, is he talking about the movie? Is he talking about Skywatcher's peer-reviewed evidence? You know, he left his Pentagon job to tell us all about it because he was constrained by his Pentagon job. Yeah, he tells us it's not his job to tell us anything. He's right, of course. His job is to hype up all this ET bullshit by creating intrigue. So people will pay him to give talks, to do TV shows. They'll buy his books. And of course, you know, they'll go to his bar and buy beers and steaks and cheeseburgers, you know. Yeah, that's Elizondo. Complete waste of time. So, you know, if you're going to interview Elizondo, whether you're MSM or anybody else, the first question he or any of these piffle peddlers should be asked is, what is your personal experience with extraterrestrial materials? Simple question. What is your experience with extraterrestrial, technological, biological materials? And if they go, well, you know, like McCatsky, you know, well, my testimony is in my book, buy my book. Any of them, whether it's Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, Gallaudet, Knell, any of these people, if you get to interview them, that should be your first question. Tell me, Mr. Elizondo, what is your personal experience with extraterrestrial technology or biology? Tell me, Mr. Knell, what is your personal experience with extraterrestrial technology or biology? Well, look at all the people that are saying it's real. It must be true. That's Knell's favourite line, isn't it? And it's ridiculous. It's meaningless. Anybody in any position in the government, in any big company, in any military rank, can have an opinion that's complete bullshit without tangible evidence to support it. It's such a big subject. So, you know, just repeating what you've been told as truth is not testimony. It's worthless. It's not worth recording this nonsense. You know, just ask them that one single simple question as the first question you ask them if you interview them. Mr. X, what is your personal experience with extraterrestrial technology and biology? See how they squirm, deflect the question, go into a monologue at a tangent. See what they say. You'll get everything but a response that addresses the question you've just asked. And there's a good reason for that. And I'm sure if you've got an IQ bigger than your shoe size, that reason will be obvious. Now, Christopher Mellon tells us, I think this was a clip from the movie, he spent approximately 20 years in the US intelligence community, this is Christopher Mellon, both in the Defense Department and on Capitol Hill with the Senate Intelligence Committee. And with this impressive background, 20 years in the Defense Department and on Capitol Hill with the Senate Intelligence Committee, the best evidence Christopher Mellon could present at the first UAP hearing was a fuzzy picture of a UAP that turned out to be a #1 party balloon. That's Chris Mellon. Remember, he called in sick to Luna's skiff as well, just like Grusch, just like Elizondo. Christopher Mellon is on this video saying, you know, he spent 20 years in the US intelligence community, both in the Defense Department and on Capitol Hill with the Senate Intelligence Committee, and the best he can do at 20 years with that impressive background is present a fuzzy image of a #1 party balloon. That should tell you how much substance this subject has. So, he refers to Farah's Age of Disclosure movie and tells us, we learned the US Air Force had a secret program to track UAP in the vicinity of Area 51 and other sensitive military facilities in the 1990s. Well, that makes sense. You know, it could be anything, couldn't it? Foreign adversarial spy vehicles of some kind, small drones, balloons with cameras hanging on them flying over Area 51, who knows, you know. He asks, does this secret program continue to this day? I suspect it probably does. I mean, if there's the military installations, you'd need some sort of program maybe to keep them safe. And it would be secret. You don't want to tell adversarial states what you're doing in order to spot any technology they may be using to spy on you. Nothing to do with extraterrestrials. There's zero tangible evidence to link any UAP with extraterrestrials. I've said it before. How many times, you know? People are seeing UAPs. I see UAPs. I see a bright light in the sky. I don't know what it is. It's a UAP. It doesn't mean it's an extraterrestrial interstellar spacecraft. There is no tangible link between what I'm seeing or what anybody else is seeing and extraterrestrials. So, not once in the history of UAP, UFO reporting has a tangible link been made between UFOs, UAPs and extraterrestrials. Not once. How long has this been going on? Mellon continues. Why is it that Air Force F-22s, despite having greatly superior sensors, did not report UAP operating in the DoD, Department of Defense, training areas off the East Coast where Navy F-18s were routinely detecting and reporting UAP on the same ranges? Why is it the USS Princeton radar data from the Nimitz case disappeared after a US Air Force officers visited the ship? Okay, well, do we know as fact that US Air Force officers visited the ship? Do we know that radar data disappeared? What you got to bear in mind is that if he's referring to the Nimitz incident, I think the Princeton radar was being the Princeton radar data was being transmitted to the F-18. So whatever the Princeton radar data saw, they saw. Remember, the Hawkeye from the Nimitz didn't see any of these UAPs either, and that's because it wasn't getting radar data from the Princeton. The Princeton had a software update on its radar systems just before this exercise. And there were these ghost blips being painted on the screen that were not real physical objects. These are being transmitted to the F-18, so they see them as well. The Hawkeye doesn't see them on its radar because they're not really there. The F-22s do not receive radar data from the Princeton. They're Air Force aircraft. They're using their onboard systems, their onboard radars, and they don't see them. I think the fact that the F-22s and the Hawkeye from the Nimitz did not see these targets tell us quite clearly that they were not real physical objects. Kevin Day, the radar operator. made a statement saying that he thinks he knows what really happened, but he's going to keep his opinion to himself because he doesn't want to destroy the credibility of the story. That tells me that Kevin Day knows it was a system glitch. So that's why the F-22s would not see these objects, because they're not real physical objects. So the Air Force officers taking the radar data on a Navy ship. I strongly suspect this is just an embellishment for effect. I very much doubt this is actual fact. Is there any evidence to support this? I very much doubt it. Skipped ahead a page. I remembered that bit. I mean, software updates often cause glitches. You know what we're seeing right now is all these A320 Airbuses are being grounded, and they've got to have their software updated. This is because they had a software update recently that's caused some sort of, and it's got a bug in it. It's got a software glitch in it that's causing uncommanded elevator movements. They could pile them into the ground. So suddenly there's a mass panic to get them reprogrammed. There's some bullshit floating around about solar radiation having to be an ingredient in this, but that's just nonsense. You know, the bottom line is they updated the software. It had a bug in it. It's causing issues, so they've grounded all the planes to change the software. And that's exactly what would have happened on the Princeton. This software update often causes glitches. They update the software, and then, oh no, now this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and they have to go back to a couple. They might get it right first time with the trying to fix it, but often it will take a couple of goes to actually fix it completely. I won't be travelling on any Airbuses anytime soon. So keep an eye on the news. So glitches in the Princeton's radar software is what caused these things. Kevin Day said they were going from the top of his screen to the bottom, top of the screen to the bottom, you know, all the time. So he thinks they're going to form up and then just do that in front of the Princeton's radar, just to keep the people on the radar operators on the Princeton amused. It's nonsense. It's drivel. So the other thing too was the Princeton said, you're not going to believe this, but this UAP you've been chasing has disappeared, and then it's reappeared at your cat point. Now apparently the cat point is a rendezvous point, so when the Hornets go out, they do their exercise, then they all return to the cat point to form up so that they can go and land back on the aircraft carrier. Now the cat point would have been programmed into the radar system, into the war game plotter, so the system would have known where the cat point was. What we don't hear is, when the aircraft returned back to their cat point, was the Princeton's radar still showing this object at the cat point? And did they see anything at the cat point? So you get back to the cat point and say, well, did the planes get to the cat point and say, there's nothing here? And then the Princeton radar say, well, I could clearly see it on the radar, because that would be definitive proof that it was a software glitch. If it's appearing on the radar and they're there and they can't see it, it's not a real physical object, is it? We don't hear anything about that. We hear the Princeton told them it's back at your cat point, but we don't hear the rest of the story. What happened when they got back to their cat point? Was there an object there? And if there wasn't an object there, did the Princeton say they could still see an object there on their radar? That would tell them all they needed to know, really, wouldn't it? And I suspect that's what told Kevin Day it was a software glitch from the software upgrade the Princeton's radar had just before the exercise. So that's why, Mr. Mellon. That's why. Software glitches, not real physical objects. It's pretty warm out here today. I think I've done this page actually. First, yes, okay, cat point. Yes, blimey, skipped over another page. I'm remembering far too much of this stuff. Hardly worth writing it down, really, is it? Yeah. So after, sometime later, Kevin Day, the radar operator on the Princeton, said that he thinks he knows what really happened, but he's going to keep it to himself, so he doesn't destroy the credibility of the story. Now remember, Kevin Day is also, or was, I don't know if it's still going, the CEO of UAPX. He formed a company. He's looking for money to get a boat and go out and film some UAPs. And I strongly suspect that he probably got some cash. They went out, they had a look, found nothing, and the bottom's fallen out of UAPX. That's a suspicion on my part, I don't know. But Kevin Day would not say that it was a glitch on the radar system, because it would kill any financing he might get for UAPX, wouldn't it? If he said they weren't real, the UAPs weren't really there, he's not going to get any money, is he? Okay, so what else have we got? Mellon asks why is it the Air Force never reports UAP detected by its strategic radar systems? These solid-state phased array radars, why tell us they're solid-state phased array radars, Mr. Mellon? What is the average Joe in the street supposed to make of that? I think people like Mellon and Coulthart and those sort of people, they use these terms because they think they sound impressive. You know, Coulthart with his synthetic aperture radars and his tactical nuclear weapons. They love phased arrays, they love that term. All that means is, if you've got a radar that uses a phased array, it means it doesn't have a scanner that spins around. You know, like you see the radar scanners going round and round and round. Phased array radars don't do that. They use the antennas on phased array radars. If you look at these ballistic missile early warning sites, they're like pyramids. They're 3 facets. And they're covered in little dipoles, UHF dipoles. The antennas themselves do not move. And by changing the phase that you feed to different sets of dipoles, you can beam steer. And it does it very quickly, of course, you know. It can beam steer around. If you've got 3 facets, you can cover 360 degrees. So they are, in fact, Mellon is quite right, they are solid-state phased array radars, but what does that mean to anybody? I think that's just a term they throw in there because they think it sounds impressive. And they think that, you know, oh, it's a phased array radar, it must be good, you know, they know what, yeah, I can see his point. Mellon says they are believed to be the most powerful emitters on the planet. That's probably true. There's certainly, they have ERPs, effective radiated powers in the megawatt range. So that's probably true. Yet despite their massive range, I mean, some of them can see quite a long distance out into space, some of these. Was it 22,000 miles out into space? I'm not, they wouldn't, yeah, it may be. Or was it 22,000 kilometres? I did read something about it. With their massive range and constant coverage, which is true, even when UAP are detected operating for days directly in front of these powerful emitters, the Air Force fails to issue any UAP reports. And it could be that, again, he's talking about UAPs that are detected on the Princeton. Is he talking about the radars that were looking out over that exercise area at that time? You know? Because you've got the F-22s not seeing it, the Hawkeye not seeing it, and now the ballistic missile early warning system not seeing these things either. There's more and more and more evidence, if you like, that these things are not really physical objects. But that's why. Now there are 5 of these around the world, I think. They're called the phased array radar something or other. I might have made a note of it further on. Yeah. Oh, this is probably it here. Because as I've said before, I make these notes at different times. You know, I'll see something and make a note. Do a load of other stuff in between writing another note. I'm not retired. I work full time still. This is not my life. Yeah. Now, presumably Mellon is talking about a system called, or a colloquial, called BMEWS. It's the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System. I think they call it something else now. Now, it is possible, of course, that this system, it's designed for detecting, it's a ballistic missile early warning system, so it's designed for detecting ballistic missiles. So to be fair, it may be that the software that they use will reject anything that doesn't look like an intercontinental ballistic missile, something that's not travelling very fast in a straight line. The software may say that's not a missile, I'm not interested in that. That's just being fair. That might be the case with the high power BMEWS radars. Oh, BMEWS is now called, I missed an asterisk, SSPARS, the Solid State Phased Array Radar System. It has 5, I thought I made a note of this. It has 5 radar installations. One's at Beale Air Force Base in California, another one's in Cape Cod Space Force Base Station in Massachusetts, there's Clear Space Force Station in Alaska, RAF Findales in the UK, and Pitufik Space Base in Greenland. And these all put out UHF energy in the megawatt range. I think one of them is very high power, might be 30 megawatts. Can't remember which one. Regardless, you know, they're not seeing these UAPs. And you might consider that if there was a UAP, it may travel in a straight line long enough to be detected. I suppose supposedly these things are falling like rain all over the planet, aren't they? All these alien spacecraft. I mean, I wouldn't want to insure these guys, would you? I wonder what galactic insurance company they use to go, oh, not the Pleiadians again, Earth again. Oh no, you know, bump their premium up. So there's this network of radar stations dotted around the world, and all of the northern hemisphere actually. They're not dotted around the world, are they? And they're not detecting any of these UAPs. There's other civilian outfits as well. There's Leo something. There's some of these. There's commercial outfits that do this as well. They plot all space debris and anything in orbit and all that sort of stuff. Might be Leo Labs or something. There's one probably about 150 kilometres from here. UHF again, a commercial radar company that sells their data to space companies, satellite companies. They can just tell you what's in orbit, and they're not reporting it either, are they? Yeah. Oh, some of these have a range of 3,000 miles. Yeah, they're not seeing any of these UAPs. Maybe they should get Mike Battista to summon a few, you know, just to test the radar. Oh dear. Yeah, the other thing too is I think Kevin Day said a lot of those targets were very slow moving. They were just doing 100 knots. Yeah, not real physical objects. So my response to Mr. Mellon would be they're not reporting it because they're not seeing it because they're not there. They're not real physical objects. Now, I thought this was quite funny. Ooh, been going a while. Oh, the battery lasts on the camera. Jeremy Corbell was on Weaponized talking about Farah's Age of Disclosure comedy movie. Corbell said, "Of course, I've got some bones to pick with the movie." This is Jeremy Corbell. A bit of a fanboy. Jeremy Corbell. Although he's been pushing quite well lately, he's been asking some good questions, to be fair. So he said, of course, I've got some bones to pick with the movie on factual reality. Oh dear, if Corbell, the dyed-in-the-wool fanboy, has some bones to pick with Farah's movie regarding factual reality, pardon me, it has some serious factual reality problems, doesn't it? He was on there with George Knapp, and of course remember George Knapp said recently on Weaponized, personally he doesn't believe in aliens. George Knapp. He's the one that introduced us to Bob Lazar. He's been a UAP fanboy for decades, and about a month ago on Weaponized he said, personally, I don't believe in aliens. George Knapp. I then saw Peter Skafish. Apparently he's an anthropologist and a co-founder of the completely pointless Soul Foundation. The Shit Out of Luck Foundation. Well, they're going to be shit out of luck if they think they're going to be involved with extraterrestrial technology or biology. Any protocols, white papers they might come up with are completely pointless because they're never going to be applicable to anything. Anyway, Mr. Skafish tells us, despite the amount of coverage on this, there isn't a lot of pickup on it in media. So I think he's talking about the he's talking about Farah's movie, and he's saying despite the amount of coverage on this, there isn't a lot of pickup on it in media. Well, the reason for that is the mainstream media aren't going to pick up on something that does not present a scrap of tangible evidence. They'll say, "Come and see us." You know, when you can prove what you're saying, come and talk to us. Until then, STFU. Shut the you-know-what up. It's pointless repeating all this science fiction rubbish over and over and over again. Completely pointless. Mr. Skafish continues, and people aren't really absorbing the significance of it, probably because there is... oh, this is me. So Skafish says, and people aren't really absorbing the significance of it. There's no tangible evidence. It is not significant, is it? This is back to me again. Probably because there isn't a scrap of tangible evidence to support any of it. Skafish tells us he's got a lot of conversations. He's got a lot of conversations with retired intelligence community people. He's got a lot of conversations with retired... It's not very good English, that. Is that me or is that Skafish? Well, I'm English, so it's probably him. Although technically I'm Australian these days. I've been Australian for a very long time, for decades. Although I have never renounced my British citizenship. I suppose I'm a dual citizen, really. So Skafish tells us he's got a lot of conversations with retired intelligence community people who have more or less... This is Skafish's words. More or less verified this stuff to him. to him directly. That have more or less verified this stuff to him directly. Now, what does that mean exactly? What does more or less, really? More or less. You know, I mean, I haven't seen any evidence. They haven't produced any evidence, but, you know, they've more or less verified it, you know. It's a complete bullshit, isn't it? It's a waste of time. Is this what the Soul Foundation wastes its time and your money on? People that are more or less verifying things. What a load of rubbish. Complete and utter drivel, isn't it? Now, I thought this was quite funny. I saw an old clip of Travis Taylor, you know, the alien invasion expert that's never seen an alien invasion or thwarted one in his life. I am an alien invasion expert. Now, he's telling us that he's previously worked with Eric Davis, probably at Skinwalker Ranch. Weren't all this lot involved with that Skinwalker Ranch rubbish? Now, Travis Taylor tells us he found Eric Davis to be extremely gullible. He didn't use that term, but that's exactly what he meant. Taylor said if someone told Davis there were aliens living on the moon, he would be inclined to believe it. Now, this is the same Eric Davis that was sitting in one of these UAP hearings next to Luna, telling us the planet is being visited by all these insectoids and greys, you know. I wonder where the insectoids come from, but they come from the bar scene, the cafe scene in the original Star Wars back in 1977. You know, got the big praying mantis in the corner. That's where that came from. Eric Davis, you know, he said, oh yeah, the Nordics, the reptilians, the insectoids and the greys, you know. And Davis is repeating this with authority, and it's science fiction rubbish. Just 2 weeks ago, someone asked Davis if he had any personal experience with extraterrestrial biology or technology, and he said, personally, no, I haven't. So Eric Davis laps all this stuff up and repeats it as truth because he's gullible enough to believe it. That's what Travis Taylor just told us. If someone told Eric Davis aliens were living on the moon, he'd be inclined to believe it. Line to Eric Davis, complete waste of time. He's got no personal experience with this stuff. He's just repeating science fiction stories. Why do people bother with Eric Davis? Why do people bother with our Hal Puthoff? As I said earlier, if you get to interview any of these people, the first question you should ask them is, what personal experience have you had with extraterrestrial materials, with extraterrestrial technology, extraterrestrial biology? Your personal experience. That should be the first question. And if they say, well, I haven't got any personal experience with extraterrestrial materials, with extraterrestrial technology or biology, you say, well, get the hell out of my studio. What are you doing here? Why am I interviewing you? I wouldn't give these clowns the time of day. So, yeah, pull a line through Davis. Now I saw our old mate Carl Knell. Now he always looks quite angry, Carl Knell, doesn't he? You know, he's determined to get us to believe it. Goodness knows why, because it's not true, is it? It's not true that they're coming here and crashing here and their technology is being reverse engineered. Carl Knell has a very extensive aerospace government department background. He has no personal experience with extraterrestrial materials, with extraterrestrial technology or biology. If you get to interview Carl Knell, the first question you should ask Carl Knell is, what is your personal experience of extraterrestrial technology or biology, and/or biology? If he says, well, look at all the people that are saying it's true, say, get out of here, Knell, you're wasting my time. You're wasting everyone's time. So, he's desperately trying to convince the gullible that all this visiting, crashing extraterrestrial nonsense is real. He tells us non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity on this planet. This interaction is ongoing and is not new, and there's zero doubt. You know, so, but you already knew that. Well, no, I don't know that. I don't think anybody with an IQ bigger than their shoe size knows that. You know, anyone with an IQ bigger than a cheese and pickle sandwich knows it's all rubbish. Knell continues. So how do we go about convincing other people that this is the case? Why is Carl Knell so invested in convincing people this is true when it's all science fiction rubbish? It's very obviously nonsense. The best way you can do that, Mr. Knell, he's not Colonel anymore, is he? If you really want to convince other people that this is the case, you are going to have to prove it with tangible evidence. Don't just sit there and say Lord Hell Norton said it was true, Mountbatten said it was true. Rattle through all these names of people that say they believe that in UFOs. That's pathetic nonsense. You know, anybody can have a belief. And I think Hill Norton's opinion was based on Colonel Holt's memo from the Rendlesham incident. You know, there's no tangible evidence that that was anything to do with extraterrestrials. You know, a lot of the stuff that he quotes, the people that have said, you know, oh, they're real and all this sort of stuff, the names that he rattles off are from decades ago. Twining, you know. So there's your answer, Colonel Knell. If you really want to convince people that aren't gullible ET fanboys, you are going to have to produce tangible evidence, not just sit there and say, I know all about it. Look at all the people that are saying it's real. Look at all the people from decades ago that are now dead that are saying it's all real, or they believe in UFOs at the very least. That's not the way to go about it. You can say that as many times as you like, but you are not going to convince anybody with an IQ bigger than their shoe size that extraterrestrials are coming to this planet, they're crashing here, and their technology is being reverse engineered without peer-reviewed, tangible evidence. You want to know what's required? That's what's required. You can spew as much science fiction rubbish, spray as many names into the air as you like. It's completely meaningless. You asked, Mr. Knell, there's your answer. They're coming here, crashing here, their technology is being reverse engineered. Prove it with tangible evidence. Or STFU. Shut the you-know-what up. Knell tells us there's three principal sources of data. There's the argument that there has to be intelligent life out in the universe. Well, most people would agree with that. As I said last week, I would bring it closer to home. I would say there's probably intelligent life in this galaxy. That doesn't mean I believe they've been here. You know, flying around the galaxy might be just as difficult for them as it is for us. We can't do it, can we? Intelligent species may be planetary, may be solar system bound. You know, they're bound to their star system. They may colonise moons on the outer planets and all that. Interstellar travel, very difficult to do. So that's the first thing Knell says. There has to be intelligent life in the universe. Well, probably true. I wonder if Knell is aware that the closest galaxy to our galaxy, the Milky Way, is 2.5 million light years away. So it doesn't really matter if there's intelligent life in the universe. They're not going to be getting here, you know, anything outside. We're not getting visitors from another galaxy. Can Knell not picture this? If we're getting visitors from the stars, they're going to be from within this galaxy. And personally, I don't believe it's happening. So the nearest galaxy to ours is the Andromeda galaxy, and it's 2.5 million light years away. And the other galaxies are, you know, they're so far away they're not even worth considering. Mind you, the Andromeda galaxy is not worth considering either. 2.5 million light years. We're not getting any intergalactic visitors. I don't think any Andromedans are going to be dropping by for a cup of tea and a cheese and pickle sandwich anytime soon. And I think this comment alone tells us that Knell has very little understanding of space, you know, how big it is, how vast the universe is. So, yeah, so the next thing Knell tells us is faster than light travel. He said, people say faster than light travel is not possible. And of course, they're right, it's not possible. Knell tells us this is false. Again, prove it. He goes on to mention the Alcubierre warp drive, the warp bubble drive. This is, of course, a theoretical drive requiring the creation of a region of negative energy density, which thus far hasn't been possible to create or manipulate. Science fiction, in other words. You know, you can't build an Alcubierre drive and travel around the stars. You may never be able to do that. You may never be able to, create a region of negative energy density. It just may not be possible, ever. It's like if I can't unicycle around the rings of Saturn now, can I? Because it's impossible. Until the end of time, anybody unicycling around the rings of Saturn is not going to be possible, is it? So put a line through interstellar, faster than light travel being possible. It isn't. If it was, we would be doing it. People played around with it, they got nowhere with it. Knell goes on to mention the Casimir effect, which is real, but it doesn't produce enough energy to be of any practical use. So put a line through the Casimir effect. It's not practical. Yeah, then he tries to bolster his science fiction rubbish by going through a list of names, as I previously mentioned, Hill Norton and all these other people who think UFOs are real or UFOs are extraterrestrial. Completely pointless, of course. As I've said before, opinions don't prove anything. Most of them were from decades ago. And in Hill Norton's case, it was based on a case that had zero tangible evidence to link it to extraterrestrials. No one is interested in decades-old opinions with zero tangible evidence to support even one of them. He then goes on to mention the thoroughly debunked Fleur video. These are the videos that were initially released back in 2017 by our old mate, the Chandelier man, Elizondo. The gimbal, the go fast, the Fleur, all thoroughly debunked. And I've said it before, you know, with the go fast, if you use the numbers on the head-up display of the F-18, you can do a bit of trigonometry and you can actually calculate the altitude of the object. And it's not low and fast, it's high and slow. It's at 13,800 feet and it's moving slowly. The numbers don't lie. Thoroughly debunked, you know, and Knell is mentioning this, trying to convince people these are real. Why? You know, is Knell really not smart enough to see they're debunked? Why they're debunked? You know, the bottom line is Knell is going to have to do a lot better than that. He's going to have to produce, if Knell or any of these other clowns could produce tangible, peer-reviewed evidence that extraterrestrials are coming to this planet, they're crashing here, their technology is being reverse engineered, the mainstream media would be all over them. The whole world would be interested in it. It's not a case of trying to convince people that all this is real without that. Because without that, it's just, might as well all be written by Hans Christian Andersen. Just like the Emperor's New Clothes. This whole thing is the Emperor's New Clothes, isn't it? The Emperor is naked. The Emperor is not wearing any clothes. There are no ETs coming here. So we can put a line through everything Knell said. Complete waste of time in being on there. He mentions the Malmstrom Air Force Base missile shutdown back in 1967. I've mentioned this previously. You know, the guy that introduced us to that story, Robert Salas, I think was a captain there at the time, presented this Malmstrom Air Force Base story. Salas later said that in 1985 he was abducted by aliens. He was just lying in bed, you know, and the aliens floated him out of bed and through his bedroom window without opening it and onto an alien spacecraft. Now, I might leave a link to him explaining his alien abduction experience below. Personally, I don't believe Salas. I don't think he's credible. My personal opinion. You know, so put a line through the Malmstrom Air Force Base story. This is something that Knell tells us about. Knell's whole presentation is a complete and utter waste of time. It's just complete and utter fluff. There is zero substance to it, and of that there is zero doubt. I mean, obviously Robert Salas is a UFO, UAP fanboy, telling people he was abducted in 1985. And he was an army officer on a missile base at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967. They had a power glitch because it was connected to the civilian power grid. It was a power glitch, probably due to solar activity. I think it was affecting the power around the States at the time. And he came up with this UFO shutting down the missiles story. Complete and utter rubbish. Knell rambles on and he mentions the aerial school incident, you know, in South Africa, I think it was, where the no adults saw this. The kids saw an alien spacecraft land, you know, and the kids were obviously pranked. The kids drew the alien spacecraft below the tree canopy as though it had been driven along the ground there. They said the aliens said nothing and were expressionless, as though they were wearing masks. They probably were. They were probably being pranked. You know, they said they wore what looked like spacesuits that looked like scuba suits, and there's a cave diving outfit up the road. I did a couple of videos about the aerial school incident, and I'll leave those videos below so you can take a look if you're interested. John Mack went to interview these kids a couple of weeks after the event, and there was all these telepathic ecological messages. When Cynthia Hind, a local UFO researcher, interviewed them very shortly after the event, there was no mention of any of this. So John Max obviously said to these kids, look, you know, when I interview people that have had these experiences with aliens, they usually get this message about looking after the planet. Did you get anything like that? Oh yeah, now you come to mention it. So put a line through the aerial school incident, and I'll leave a link below as well to he then goes on to mention the Westall incident, which was way back when in Australia, and I did a video about that, and I'll leave that a link to that below as well, so you can see the story back then and the story now, and how it differs, how it is far less sensational now, because the teacher is much older and he's forgotten what he said in the first place. He was never threatened. It's embellished bullshit. And if you look at Wikipedia, I think it says it was a weather balloon, wasn't it, or some sort of balloon. There's nothing extraterrestrial related to the Westall story. And again, with those, with the Ariel School story and the the Westall School stories, there is no tangible link between anything there and extraterrestrials. You know, nothing fell off. It was analysed and found out to be extraterrestrial material. These kids that supposedly got all these eco messages from these aliens have been interviewed as adults. Not one single one of them is an eco warrior. So the aliens wasted their time crossing the galaxy, going to that school and telling all the kids to look after the planet, didn't they? It's complete and utter rubbish, isn't it? It's drivel. So, yeah, I'll leave links to the videos that I've done in the past about those cases, for want of a better word. And if you're really bored or you're suffering from insomnia, you might want to take a look at those. So, Ariel School, the kids were pranked. The Westall School, I think that was just another exaggerated. They saw something unusual. And it got woven into this extraterrestrial story. Zero tangible evidence to support that. So, the teacher said originally he was told to shut up by a representative from the Air Force. When he was interviewed later, they said, you were threatened by someone from the Air Force. He said, no, the headmaster said to me, you know, had a chat with me about it, but that was it. He didn't see anybody from the Air Force. So the story changed. It's like the Rendlesham Forest story, you know. Although the Westall story became less embellished over time, whereas the Rendlesham story became more embellished. Jim Penniston's bloody rubbish. So Knell tells us he's speaking to us today to tell us there is zero doubt that this is absolutely true. I know this personally. So if you know this personally, Mr. Knell, you are going to have to personally prove it. Don't sit there, and I've said this before, these people, they get absorbed into this subject, they get interested in it. Before you know where you are, they know something you don't. They're read in. It's some sort of mental thing that happens with this subject. So, if Mr. Knell, you know this as fact personally, you're going to put up. You're going to have to put up tangible evidence to support what you're saying. Put up, or STFU. Mr. Knell. So, personally, I doubt Knell knows anything whatsoever from personal experience. I think there's pressure behind the scenes because so many people are saying, where's the evidence? This is all bullshit. None of these people have got any personal experience with this stuff. And now, suddenly, he's got personal experience of it. You're going to have to do a lot better than that, Mr. Knell. You're going to have to provide tangible evidence. If you want anyone that's not a dyed-in-the-wall, blinkered fanboy with the IQ of a cheese and pickle sandwich to believe this stuff, you're going to have to present tangible evidence to support it. You can spend half an hour spraying out all this bullshit. You could spend 5 minutes proving it. That doesn't happen, does it? So, if you get to interview Carl Knell, first question to ask Mr. Knell, You have told us that you know this personally. What personal experience do you have with extraterrestrial technology and or biology, Mr. Knell? And see if you start spraying out all these names. I'm talking about Malmstrom Air Force Base, or Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, who was told a story about a flying saucer coming out and the legs coming out and it landing at Holloman Air Force Base or whatever it was. And he liked the story, so he decided to use that, to claim that as his own. And he was going around telling people that he'd seen this flying saucer and the gear come out and it land, and it was a story he had been told. That's Gordon Cooper. Zero credibility. Personal opinion. I don't know if Gordon Cooper's still alive, is he? Be pretty older. Be pretty old now if he was, if he is. So what Knell says is the way to solve this problem, the problem being everyone with an IQ bigger than their shoe size thinking it's all bullshit, is to motivate, and that's my bit, he didn't say that obviously, he said, Knell says the way to solve this problem, the problem being everyone, that's me, hang on. The way to solve this problem is to motivate the grassroots. Political activism is the solution. No, it isn't. What use is political activism? You know, you're not going to get Trump to disclose something that's not real. There's nothing to disclose. As I've said, it's more likely I'll be made the next Pope than it is that Donald Trump will come out and say that this is all true. ETs are coming here and crashing here, their technology is being reverse engineered. Roswell was the first one back in 1947. It's never going to happen because it's not true. So he can do as much political, activism as he likes. It's going to go nowhere. It's like these institutes. You've got to push for disclosure, push for disclosure. Donate $5. I saw from Danny Sheehan, I think it was the other day. They've just been given a pile of money last year. Has that gone low already? What's that being spent on exactly? Give us your money, we'll push for disclosure. And that's another thing too. Bear in mind, a lot of these clowns were tied up with the TTSA, with Tom DeLonge. To the Stars Academy. Send us your money and we'll build a starship. Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis are involved. They tell us it's all true. They know how to do it. We'll knock one up in the shed over the weekend. They got millions of dollars. No starship was produced. Where's the money? The TTSA, and these people have all got this sort of background, like Hal Puthoff with the remote viewing program. Psychic spies, it's all drivel. So political activism is not the solution, Mr. Knell. You've got personal experience of this stuff, prove it. That's all you need to do. You don't need political activism. Why would you need political activism if you can prove this with tangible evidence? If you can prove extraterrestrials are coming to this planet, they're crashing here, and their technology is being reverse engineered, why on earth would you need political activism? This Knell character, complete waste of time. There is no doubt. Mr. Knell is a complete waste of time. Personal opinion. What else have we got? Have we got anything? I think I probably jumped over a page. So, science fiction stories and naming people that, in their opinion, say that it's real, just do not cut the mustard. It's nonsense. Tangible evidence is required. Yeah, I mean, anyone that believes what Knell had to say in that monologue must have the IQ of a cheese and pickle sandwich. They must be a blinkered fanboy with zero critical thinking ability to believe anything Knell said. It's all science fiction rubbish. Put a line, Put a line through Carl Knell. Next caller, please. Is that the last page? Yes, it is. Okay. So, as usual, I hope I've given you some food for thought. Don't believe any of these bloody clowns unless they can produce tangible evidence to support what they're saying. Such a monumental subject, such an extraordinary claim. The extraordinary evidence is required. Don't believe people like Nolan that say, oh, well, if you're smart enough, you'll accept this with zero tangible evidence. I mean, that, to me, in itself, is ridiculous, you know. How dumb would you have to be to make a comment like that? You know, does he think most of the population are as dumb as a box of hammers? Is that what he believes? Carl Knell rattling off all these names, Gallaudet, you know, Davis, Putoff, all these people, Elizondo, you know, the Chandelier Man, Mellon, the #1 party balloon man, Grusch, the Rubber Room Man. Tangible evidence is required to support these stories, or even one of them. Even one of them will do. One of them will get someone a Nobel Prize, won't it? One of just tangible evidence to prove one of these stories will get someone's name in the history books forever. It doesn't happen because it isn't happening. If you've struggled through the video all the way to this point, as usual, as always, many thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you again.